me two-time, baby. Love me twice today. Love me two-time, girl. I'm going away. Love me two-time, girl. One for tomorrow, one just for today. Welcome, Ragers, 5%ers, Patriots. How are you guys doing today? I thought I'd bring you another episode of the Psy-Op series. I promised you we were going to talk about Jim Morrison's dad. I promised you about a week ago we were going to talk about him. Captain George Stephen Morrison, James Morrison's father. A notorious racist. How do I know that? Well, I years and years ago, I read a couple of biographies about Jim Morrison, and that's where it was well known that Captain Morrison told his son if he ever brings home a nigger bitch, Jim Morrison will be he'll be written out of the will, essentially. So we know Captain George Morrison was a racist. We know he's Jim Morrison's dad. What else do we know about him? Well, he had a major hand in starting the Psy-Op that started the Vietnam War. And ironically enough, the song Love Me Two Times is about a young man going off to war who knows he's going to die, so he wants sex twice the day before he leaves. One for tomorrow, one just for today. So there's some rock and roll trivia history that you may or may not be aware of. Anyway, I am not the foremost expert on the Vietnam War, nor am I the foremost expert on the fathers of major rock stars who all died at age 27, which I think is something worth looking into. Jim Morrison definitely has a place in my heart, even though he, by admission, is a murderer. We don't know who he killed. He never got prosecuted for the murder. We do know that he admitted to it on tape. So, he was a pretty fucked up, evil guy. His girlfriend, Pamela, which was, I believe, his last girlfriend that he had when he was living in France before he died, she was a hardcore occultist. She was a self-proclaimed witch, I think, to this day. She still might be alive. She talks about her occultish practices, and that was his last girlfriend before he died. So, we know his father was a bona fide racist. We know his last girlfriend before he died was a witch. And we know he himself was a fucking murderer. But for whatever reason, we all seem to fucking love the Doors. I don't know why. I grew up in LA, so trust me, I spent a lot of time in Venice Beach. And everybody loves the Doors. So, but anyway, let's get into who Captain James Stephen Morrison is. I'm going to go ahead and read you an article because, again, I'm not the foremost expert on the Vietnam War. It is not something I've spent a good amount of my life studying. But this article is taken from wearethemighty.com. It was written by Ward Carroll. It was published on January 28th, 2019, so just about a year and a half, a month ago. I'm going to go ahead and just read this through for you so you guys can understand what's going on. And that's going to essentially be the entirety of the podcast. If you are interested in giving me any feedback or if you have any additional information, I would love to bring you on the show, in which case we can do a part 2 of this particular Psy-Op episode. I'd be more than happy to do a part 2 and get some more information about that. If you served in the Vietnam War, please come on my show. If your father, your uncle, anybody who served, please come on the show. I would love to hear your story. So let's go ahead with the article. It's fairly well known to students of pop culture and classic rock aficionados that the father of the Doors frontman Jim Morrison was a flag officer in the U.S. Navy. What is not well known is that then Captain George Stephen Morrison was the commander of U.S. naval forces at the time of the Gulf of Tonkin incident that gave the Johnson administration the justification they needed to enter the Vietnam War. After graduating with the U.S. Naval Academy's class of 1941, George Morrison was sent to Hawaii to join the crew of the mine layer USS Pruitt. He was there on the fateful morning of December 7th when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. After several combat deployments as a surface warfare officer, Morrison went to flight school. He pinned on his wings of gold in 1944 and flew combat missions in the Pacific for the balance of World War II and also during the Korean War. In August of 1964, Morrison was aboard the USS Bonhomme Richard, leading the U.S. Navy force stationed off the coast of Vietnam. On August 2nd, several North Vietnamese patrol boats attacked the USS Maddox during an intelligence gathering mission that put the ship at 28 miles off the coast. The PT boats fired several torpedoes that Maddox evaded while firing back with 5-inch guns. Maddox hit one of the attacking boats, while F-8 aircraft launched from the USS Ticonderoga strafed the others as they fled, sinking one and heavily damaging another. Maddox emerged from the skirmish having only been hit by a single bullet. Tensions remained high over the next days, and Morrison put his assets on high alert. Under the direction of President Johnson, he also ordered Maddox, along with the USS Turner Joy, to sail close to the North Vietnamese coast to show the flag. During the evening and early morning of the rough winter and heavy seas, the destroyers received radar, sonar, and radio signals that they believed signal another attack by the North Vietnamese Navy. For some 4 hours, the ships fired on radar targets and maneuvered vigorously amid electronic and visual reports of enemies. Despite the Navy's claim that 2 attacking torpedo boats had been sunk, there was no wreckage, bodies of North Vietnamese sailors, or any physical evidence present at the scene of the alleged entanglement. James B. Stockdale, later an admiral who was bestowed the Medal of Honor for his bravery during his time as a POW in Hanoi, was airborne as an F-8 during that time and reported seeing no enemy activity. The details of the incident were distorted, perhaps intentionally. Let me read that again. The details of the incident were distorted, perhaps intentionally, between Morrison and the other commanders on the scene, the Pentagon and the White House. That night, President Johnson interrupted primetime TV, a very big deal in those days, and told the American public that 2 U.S. Navy warships had been attacked on the high seas, and he was asking Congress for support to counter the North Vietnamese aggression. At the same time, Morrison and his staff told Navy headquarters in Hawaii that the radar returns the destroyers had targeted were probably false returns generated by the rough seas. Headquarters relayed the information to the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, but he failed to give those details to President Johnson. Based on Johnson's testimony that the destroyers had suffered an unprovoked attack in international waters, Congress approved the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, giving the president authority to conduct military operations in Southeast Asia without a declaration of war. How about that? According to an article by Jeff Cohen and Norman Solomon, the next year Johnson commented privately, "For all I know, our Navy was shooting whales out there." Damn. George Stephen Morrison went on to earn his first star at the young age of 47. 5 years later, he was the keynote speaker at the decommissioning ceremony for Bonhomme Richard in Washington, D.C., the same day his son Jim, the rock icon, died in Paris, France, at the age of 27 after years of drug and alcohol abuse. The elder Morrison was an avid piano player who had always encouraged his 3 children to appreciate music, but he never understood the choices Jim made and was always perplexed when he went to his friends' homes and saw posters of his son on their children's walls. George Stephen Morrison retired from the Navy in August 1975 as a Rear Admiral. He died in Coronado, California in 2008. All right, guys, so this Psy-Op thing, this isn't anything new. This is not anything new. I do have the article by Jeff Cohen and Norman Solomon. This was written in July 27th, 1994, and it's called The 30-Year Anniversary, The Tonkin Gulf Lie That Launched the Vietnam War. I'm going to skip around here just a little bit, but I'm going to give you as much of this article as I can. 30 years ago, it all seemed very clear. American planes hit North Vietnam after second attack on our destroyers. Move taken to halt new aggression, announced the Washington Post headline on August 5, 1964. That same day, the front page of the New York Times reported, President Johnson has ordered retaliatory action against gunboats and certainly supporting facilities in North Vietnam after renewed attacks against American destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. But there was no second attack by North Vietnam, no renewed attacks against American destroyers. By reporting official claims as absolute truths, American journalism opened the floodgates for the bloody Vietnam War. Doesn't that sound familiar? Hashtag 9/11 was an inside job. Hashtag October 1st was an inside job. Hashtag January 6th was an inside job. A pattern took hold. Continuous government lies passed on by pliant mass media, leading to over 50,000 American deaths and millions of Vietnamese casualties. The official story was that North Vietnamese torpedo boats launched an unprovoked attack against a U.S. destroyer on routine patrol in the Tonkin Gulf on August 2nd, and that North Vietnamese PT boats followed up with a deliberate attack on a pair of U.S. ships 2 days later. The truth was very different. Rather than being on a routine patrol August 2nd, the U.S. destroyer Maddox was actually engaged in aggressive intelligence-gathering maneuvers, in sync with coordinated attacks on North Vietnam by the South Vietnamese Navy and the Laotian Air Force. The day before, 2 attacks on North Vietnam had taken place, writes scholar Daniel C. Hallen, those assaults were part of a campaign of increasing military pressure on the North that the United States had been pursuing since early 1964. Oh, okay, so they really had planned this shit out. On the night of August 4th, the Pentagon proclaimed that a second attack by North Vietnamese PT boats had occurred earlier that day in the Tonkin Gulf. A report cited by President Johnson as he went on national TV that evening to announce momentous escalation in the war, airstrikes against North Vietnam. But Johnson ordered U.S. bombers to retaliate for a North Vietnamese torpedo attack that never happened. Prior to the U.S. airstrikes, top officials in Washington had reason to doubt that any August 4th attack by North Vietnamese had occurred. Cables from the U.S. Task Force commander in the Tonkin Gulf, Captain John J. Herrick, referred to freak weather effects, almost total darkness, and an overeager sonarman who was hearing ship's own propeller beat. Let me read that again. Cables from the U.S. Task Force commander in the Tonkin Gulf, Captain John J. Herrick, referred to freak weather effects, almost total darkness, and an overeager sonarman who was hearing the ship's own propeller beat. One of the Navy pilots flying overhead that night was Squadron Commander James Stockdale, who gained fame later as a POW and then Ross Perot's vice presidential candidate. I had the best seat in the house to watch that event, recalled Stockdale a few years ago. Now, mind you, this article was written in 1994, so he's probably referring to like 1990 or 1991. And our destroyers were just shooting at phantom targets. There were no PT boats there. There was nothing there but black water and American firepower. Mic drop. In 1965, Lyndon Johnson commented, "For all I know, our Navy was shooting at whales out there." But Johnson's deceitful speech of August 4th, 1964 won accolades from editorial writers. The president proclaimed the New York Times went to the American people last night with the somber facts. The Los Angeles Times urged Americans to face the fact that communists, by their attack on American vessels in international waters, have themselves escalated the hostilities. And in an exhaustive new book, The War Within, America's Battle Over Vietnam, begins with a dramatic account of the Tonkin Gulf incidents. In an interview, Author Tom Wells told us that American media described the airstrikes that Johnson launched in response as merely tit for tat, when in reality they reflected plans the administration had already drawn up for gradually increasing its overt military pressure against the North. Wow, that sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Sounds a little bit like Iraq, doesn't it? Why such inaccurate news coverage? Wells points to the media's almost exclusive reliance on U.S. government officials as sources of information. What do we keep telling you? The deep state controls Hollywood and they control the news sources. Okay? The CIA controls all of that shit and they have been since the 1960s. Okay? We know this already. Here's confirmation right here. Let me read it again. Wells points to the media's almost exclusive reliance on U.S. government officials as sources of information, as well as a reluctance to question official pronouncements on national security issues. Let that sink in. Daniel Hallen's classic book, The Uncensored War, observes that journalists had a great deal of information available which contradicted the official account of Tonkin Gulf events. It simply wasn't used. The day before the first incident, Hanoi had protested attacks on its territory by Laotian aircraft and South Vietnamese gunboats. Oh, so maybe someone else was starting this shit. That's what it sounds like. What's more, it was generally known that covert operations against North Vietnam carried out by South Vietnamese forces with U.S. support and direction had been going on for some time. In the absence of independent journalism, the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, the closest thing there ever was to a declaration of war against Vietnam, sailed through Congress on August 7th. Two courageous senators, Wayne Morse of Oregon and Ernest Gruening of Alaska, provided the only no votes. The resolution authorized the president to take all necessary measures to repel any armed attack against the forces of the United States and to prevent further aggression. The rest is tragic history. Nearly 3 decades later, during the Gulf War, communist Sidney Schanberg warned journalists not to forget our unquestioning chorus of agreeability when Lyndon Johnson bamboozled us with his fabrication of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Schanberg blamed not only the press, but also an apparent amnesia of the wider American public. Oh, wow, that sounds familiar. Like, all this amnesia that Barack Obama was ever president and that this country perhaps is not fucking racist. Amnesia like that. And he added, we Americans are the ultimate innocents. We are forever desperate to believe that this time the government is telling us the truth. And that is the end of the article. But let me read that last line one more time. We Americans are the ultimate innocents. We are forever desperate to believe that this time the government is telling us the truth. Well, I don't think that it could be any more well-worded than that. So, Patriots, I hope you learned something. Always question, okay? Do your research, find out more about your history, find out more about American history. And if anyone in your life is in question, has any doubts as to what happened on January 6th, you go ahead and use Jim Morrison's dad as the perfect example of what is called, where I'm from, is called a setup. It's called a fucking setup. All right? All right, ladies and gentlemen, you use this as ammunition against the left because we cannot forget that this is not the first time this has happened. This is not the first time the media has jumped on the inaccuracy bandwagon, and this is not the first time the American public as a whole has completely fucked up, and that's where we're at in our society today. All right, everyone, just want to let you know the Red Pill Rage website, redpillrage.net, is still under construction. However, I have moved my hosting service from Google to Amsterdam. So the Roku channel is going to be coming soon. The Amazon Fire channel is coming soon. We're going to host all of that offshore so that we can never be censored and never be taken down, or at least it's much less likely for that to happen. We've got some announcements from the walkaway movement, which I will put in tomorrow's podcast. I want you to hear what's going on there. I did mention it before a couple of times, but I want you to know what's next for walkaway. Ollie Alexander is still missing in action, but all of my Proud Boy brothers are free as we speak. I was watching the stupid impeachment hearing, and it looks like Nick's name came up. They just can't leave it alone, can they? But at least he's famous now. Hopefully he'll be safe and protected, though. So be praying for the Proud Boys. They are being viciously attacked. Be praying for all of the conservative activists who are now being viciously attacked, targeted, and even in some cases greenlit for there's contracts in certain people's heads. So let's just all keep them in prayer. All right, guys, please go follow me on the TikTok. I'm still on Twitter. Haven't gotten kicked off of Twitter yet. Library, BitChute. I'm on Gab now. News Clapper. Okay, go catch me on News Clapper too. Okay, and until stupid Parlor gets back up, like I said, so you can always email me redpill_rage@protonmail.com.